The room is already crowded when you arrive at Ingersoll's house. Boots stamp off snow. Wet wool hangs in the air. Benches have been pushed back toward the walls, clearing a narrow strip of floor between the hearth and the door. Someone has shoved benches toward the walls to clear a strip of floor in the middle. Two magistrates sit forward, John Haythorne and Jonathan Corwin. A clerk works at a small table with a pen, paper, and ink that thickens in the cold. People keep pressing in. Some come from Salem Village, others from nearby farms. 3 accused women stand under the questions: Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba from the minister's household. The afflicted are in the room. Abigail Williams and the other girls move and cry out as names are spoken. When the magistrate turns to Tituba, the noise rises. Haythorne asks whether she has seen the devil. Tituba answers, "The devil came to me and bid me serve him." Questions come fast. Who else? What shapes? What words? Tituba gives the shapes people expect to hear in sermons and cautionary tales. Sometimes it is like a hog, and sometimes like a great dog. She says 2 cats came, a red cat and a black cat. She also tells the room how witches travel. We ride upon sticks and are there presently. In a village already trained to believe in an invisible world, those details land like proof. A neighbor hears a confession, then hears her own name in the same breath. A magistrate hears a confession and hears a larger plot. The clerk writes it down. By the end of the day, the village has a new kind of story to repeat, and the law has a reason to keep taking people. I'm Kat, and this is You Can Ignore Me. Tonight we're talking about the Salem Witch Trials. Not just what happened, but what made it possible. How a small town, full of people who knew each other, slowly turned suspicion into certainty and neighbors into enemies. It can feel like a story we already know, just because it's been told so many times. But the closer you get to what survives on paper, the stranger it becomes. Not only what people said, but how quickly suspicion hardened into certainty, and how difficult it was to pull a community back from that edge. The paper that brings them into this room is dated February 29th, 1692. A complaint becomes a warrant when a magistrate signs it. The language is formal and the purpose is plain: to take bodies into custody and bring them to examination. The names on the warrant are the names the village has already been repeating for days. The complaint is made by men, because the court listens first to men with standing. A pair of neighbors put their names to it. A magistrate hears it. Another magistrate signs. It passes from hand to hand, folded once, then folded again, kept close to a coat so the ink does not smear. The man who carries the warrant has to find people who do not want to be found. He rides out on frozen ground where the ruts have turned to ice. A constable knocks at a door. A neighbor points down a lane. Someone says she went that way. Someone else says she's hiding at her husband's kin. Sarah Good has been living on the edge of other people's households. She comes into the kitchens to beg. She sleeps where she can. She is quick to curse when she is refused. Some people in Salem Village have been ready to name her as a witch before any mention of the Paris girls, because a poor woman who mutters and threatens fits a familiar pattern. When the constable finds her, she does not come quietly in spirit, even if she comes in body. She argues. She swears she has done nothing. She clutches her little girl, Dorcas, close enough to make the officer pry small fingers loose. The child cries and hangs on. Someone watching says the girl is already marked. Sarah Osborne is easier to take because she's already sick. The constable finds her at home, weak and in pain, and still she has to be brought. It looks less like an arrest than a hauling. The neighbors who watch do not stop it. The argument about her name has been going on too long. They have already decided what kind of woman she is. Tituba is taken from the parsonage, from Samuel Parris's household. She is enslaved. She has no local kin network to sign petitions for her, and no property to bargain with. Once her name is spoken aloud, she is the easiest person in the village to push into whatever story the magistrate wants to hear. By night, all three are held for the morning. Many in the village have wanted a witch for weeks. Now the magistrates have prisoners. The trouble begins in the parsonage. Samuel Parris has been the minister in Salem Village since 1689. The village is not fully independent of Salem town. Taxes still tie the farms to the port. Church control still runs back toward town. Salem Village has been arguing for years over money, boundaries, and whether it can have its own minister on its own terms. Parris arrives in the middle of that and takes sides. He wants his salary and the use of the parsonage and the firewood owed to him. Men in the village want a minister they can restrain. When the village committee votes one way, the other side answers with petitions and refusals. Parris keeps a careful account of what he believes he is owed. His enemies keep a careful account of what they believe he is not. A winter Sunday locks the dispute into place. People file into the meeting house and sit in cold. Parris preaches about the devil as an active enemy. When he names witchcraft, he is not telling a ghost story. He is pointing to a crime the law says must be punished. Outside Salem, Massachusetts, has been living through political upheaval. A new charter has only recently been issued. A governor is expected. Local magistrates handle the province day to day while the larger government takes shape. In a season where authority is already being argued over, a public claim of witchcraft becomes another test of who is allowed to command. Parris's house is crowded. His daughter Betty is 9. His niece Abigail Williams is older. Servants move in and out. Tituba and a man called John Indian do the work an enslaved household is forcing them to do: hauling water, cutting wood, cooking, and scrubbing. People visit, children drift through. On winter nights, the rooms are close and the air smells of smoke and damp cloth. In mid-January, the girls begin to have fits. Some of the people pressed against the walls in Ingersoll's house come from one place. Thomas Putnam and Ann Putnam Sr. have influence in Salem Village and deep involvement in the village disputes. Putnam signs complaints. Putnam sits with magistrates. His name appears again and again because his house is one of the places where the afflicted gather and where the accusations harden into paper. Their daughter, Ann Putnam Jr., becomes one of the loudest voices in the examinations. Mercy Lewis lives in their household as a servant. She is a refugee from the Northern Frontier Wars, a young woman who has seen a different kind of night attack, with fire and shouting and bodies left in the snow. In a courtroom, Mercy Lewis points and cries out, and says she sees a specter. In her own memory, she also has faces of raids and broken settlements. The two kinds of danger do not stay separate for people who live through both. When Thomas Putnam gives support to Paris and stands close to the magistrates, the village dispute and the witchcraft charge sit in the same room. When the first fits happen, Betty Paris and Abigail Williams twist, fall, cry out. They complain of bites and pinches. They wake screaming. Their bodies jerk as if pulled by cords. A neighbor comes in and watches a child shake and then goes still. Another neighbor says it has to be trickery. Someone else says no child can keep up such torment for so long. The girls begin to say they see shapes at the edge of the room. A woman, a man, a creature low to the floor. They say something sits on their chest, and it pulls their hair, puts pins into them. When a person walks across the room, a girl collapses as if the step struck her. Neighbors test them in small ways. Someone asks them to repeat the Lord's Prayer and watches what happens when they reach the words about deliverance from evil. Someone watches whether the fits begin when a certain person enters. Someone stands by the window and scans the yard for tracks that do not belong. The household fills with witnesses because witnesses is what a village has. A mother from down the road leans in close and watches a girl's eyelids flutter. A farmer takes off his cap and looks like he's in church. A minister asks questions in a low voice, then prays harder when the answers fail. William Griggs, the local physician, is called. He looks for a sickness he can name. He does not find one he accepts. His conclusion is not a shrug. He says the girls are under an evil hand. After Griggs says evil hand, the household stops looking for ordinary causes and starts looking for a witch. The first response is not a court. It is a kitchen. Mary Sibley, a neighbor, tells the household to try a common remedy. A cake is made with rye meal in the afflicted girl's urine. Tituba and John Indian are ordered to make it. The cake is fed to a dog. The idea behind it is plain. If the suffering is caused by witchcraft, then something taken from the body might draw the witch out, or at least draw proof into the open. A dog is not an innocent detail. In the stories people tell about witches in New England, animals appear often. A black dog at the bedside, a cat that speaks, a bird that sucks blood from a finger. A familiar is a creature that feeds and carries harm. Someone stands and watches the dog eat. Someone waits for the dog to howl or stagger. Nothing happens that ends the matter. The girls keep shaking and crying out. Paris is angry when he learns of it. He wants witchcraft named and punished, but he does not want folk practice inside his house. Sibley is forced to confess before the congregation and is barred from communion for a time. The fits continue anyway. The remedy does not calm the household. It sharpens the demand for a name. By late February, the girls are asked directly who hurts them. A question like that has a limited number of acceptable answers. The village does not want the blame to land on the minister's household itself, or on quarrels inside respected homes, or on the strain of winter. It wants a person. Sarah Good fits because she's already disliked and already spoken of as dangerous. She and her husband William have been moving from place to place. She is often hungry. When she is refused charity, she mutters under her breath, When a cow later sickens, or a child later cries in the night, someone remembers the muttering. Sarah Osborne fits for a different reason. She has been at the center of a fight over property and marriage. She married her servant after her first husband died. She fought with neighbors over land and inheritance. She stopped attending meetings. In a village where church attendance marks your public place, staying home becomes evidence that can be carried into a magistrate's room. Tituba fits because she is both inside the parsonage and outside the village's protections. She came to Massachusetts with Paris from overseas. She speaks with an accent the village still treats as foreign. She has stories of her own, and the household has already been asking her and the other servants to explain the girl's suffering. When the demand for a witch hardens, the servant is close at hand. Once those three names are said in a frightened household, the warrant can be written. On March 1st, 1692, the prisoners are brought to Nathaniel Ingersoll's house and questioned in public. The magistrates do not ask, "Are you a witch?" They ask questions that assume witchcraft has already happened. They want a confession or a denial that can be treated as stubbornness. Haythorne presses Sarah Good about a familiar spirit. He asks whether she has a little creature that sucks her blood. A girl across the room cries out and points at Good's hands. Another says she sees a yellow bird. The clerk writes it down because the clerk has been ordered to write down everything. Good keeps denying it. Her answers come sharp and defensive. She returns the accusations when she can, because a cornered person reaches for any weapon available. She tells Haythorne that someone else hurts the girls. She points at other women. She accuses another woman in the room of being a witch. Every time she speaks, someone in the crowd reacts as if her words have teeth. When the girls fall into fits at the same moment, the reaction is treated as proof. The magistrates ask again. They ask whether she has sent her specter, whether she signed the devil's book. At moments, the room asks for a test. A girl reaches out and touches the prisoner. A fit appears to stop, then begins again. A clerk records the touch and the change because those small shifts become part of the case later. In a crime no one can see, the room grabs for anything it can watch. Sarah Osborne denies too, but she does not fight in the same way. She is sick. Her sentences fall apart. Haythorne and Corwin keep pressing anyway. They have a room full of witnesses and a village full of expectation. A denial does not close the hearing. It opens the next question. Then Tituba confesses. Once she begins, the room changes. A confession gives the magistrates a story they can build from, and it gives the afflicted a set of images they can attach their fits to. Tituba says a man in black came to her. She says he showed her a book and promised her fine things if she would serve him, threatening her if she would not. She says she saw other witches in the village. She describes creatures: a black dog, a red cat, a bird. She says these creatures came and went, and that they spoke. She says witches meet at night, and they ride upon sticks and arrive quickly. She says the meeting includes a book and marks and promises, and that the man in black tells her to hurt the children. Her words do not stay inside the parsonage. People repeat them house to house. The charge now has a fixed story: a book, a signature, a familiar, a night meeting. Haythorne asks for names. Corwin asks for names. Men in the crowd call for names. Tituba gives names. The clerk writes until his fingers cramp. Afterward, the prisoners are searched. Women in the community examine skin in candlelight, looking for the mark that will prove a covenant. A mole becomes suspicious. If a spot does not bleed when pricked, it becomes a sign. The body is turned into evidence because the room believes the devil leaves traces. More examinations follow on March 5th. In that setting, a confession does not stay fixed. A confession grows. The magistrates return to the same points, and each return adds a detail. Who else was there? What did they do? What shape did the devil take? What did you sign? Whose hand was on the pen? The answers shape the next arrest. An accusation produces a warrant. A warrant produces another examination, and the examination produces more accusations. Commitment papers follow the examinations. A clerk writes a minimus ordering a prisoner sent to jail. An officer takes the paper and the body together. Once the minimus is written, an argument in a kitchen becomes a chain on an ankle. The jails begin filling. Salem's jail cannot hold the number of prisoners being named. Some accused are sent to Boston, to a larger jail that already holds debtors and ordinary criminals. On March 7th, the first key prisoners are transported. The road is long. Iron rubs skin raw. A man on horseback can deliver a warrant in hours. A family can take weeks to gather money to pay jail fees and bring food. The accused are not fed by the province without cost. A jailer charges for iron, straw, water, a lock, and the release. Families bring bread and meat when they're allowed to. Some cannot. Some are already poor, and now the province has put a fee schedule on their survival. Disease and exhaustion sit in the cells with the prisoners. A day like March 1st leaves behind more than memory. The clerk's notes are kept. Some are copied. Paris keeps his own record of what was said in the room, and those pages show exactly how the questions were asked and how the afflicted answered. When a witness changes her story in April, the March paper can be pulled out and read again. Neighbors begin writing depositions. A deposition is a story forced into a set form. A witness names the date, names the accused, describes a quarrel, a threat, a sickness that followed. The witness swears it is true and signs, or makes a mark if he cannot write. A justice of the peace adds his name. Paper turns a neighbor's resentment into something the court can carry. Once people see that a statement can move a person into jail, statements multiply. A man remembers a cow that died after an argument. A woman remembers a borrowed kettle and a curse. A boy remembers a figure in the woods. Each memory becomes a paragraph with a signature. A warrant follows the same route. The magistrate's name at the bottom gives an officer authority to enter a house, take a woman, and bring her to the next examination. The officer becomes a familiar figure on the road, a man with a horse and a folded sheet in his pocket. In the jails, paper has another purpose. A jailer keeps account of what he is owed for iron, for straw, for food. When a prisoner is moved from Salem to Boston, the paper travel is literal. A minimus in one hand, the chain in the other, the prisoner stumbling behind a horse. In the village, paper becomes a way to resist as well as accuse. When a respected person is named, friends start writing petitions. Those sheets look different from warrants. They list names of neighbors who say the accused has lived honestly and harmed no one. The same pen that writes a charge can write a defense. The village will soon be full of both kinds of writing. Every ride brings another name. Even after Sarah Osborne is locked away, the words keep coming. On April 8th, Mercy Lewis gives a statement describing what she claims Osborne has done to her. The language in a deposition turns a night's terror into a legal piece of paper. The time of day, the location of the witness, the act of harm, the name of the person blamed. Lewis describes a specter. She describes a pressure on her body. She describes a threat and a book offered to her with a demand that she sign. Whether she believes every detail in the moment or learns what details the room accepts, the statement becomes usable. The deposition does not need to show a wound. It needs a witness willing to swear to what she says she saw. The accusations do not stay aimed at the people easiest to name. On March 21st, Martha Corey is examined. She is a church member. A woman was standing in the meeting house. Her presence under accusation pulls a different kind of crowd to the examination. People come who are ready to defend her, and people come who are ready to watch her fall. The afflicted cry out when she looks at them. A magistrate asks her why they are tormented in her presence. Corey denies it. She pushes back at the logic of the room. She asks how she can answer for what a girl claims she sees. Her denial only sharpens the questioning, because a denial from a woman like Corey threatens the story the magistrates are trying to keep coherent. 2 days later, on March 23rd, the village puts a child under accusation. A warrant is issued for Dorcas Good, Sarah Good's little girl. A child held on a capital charge tells everyone watching what kind of year this is becoming. Dorcas is small enough that the irons look like something made for an adult. She is kept in a jail anyway. Under questioning, the child begins repeating the language the adults have been using around her. She says she's been given a little creature. She says her mother brought her to the devil. The answers came out like a child trying to match the shape of a question. On March 24th, Rebecca Nurse is examined. She is older, widely respected, the kind of woman people ask to sit with the sick. Her neighbors do not all accept the charge. Some come ready to speak for her. Nurse has relatives across the region. Her sisters' names are known. Her family has ties and land and long-standing grudges with other families in the village. When her name is called witch, the word collides with a different kind of authority. The authority of a good reputation earned over decades. The examination proceeds anyway, with the same questions, the same fits, the same clerk taking down words as if they will settle the matter. A girl cries that Nurse's specter stands at her shoulder. A neighbor insists the woman has been charitable and pious for decades. The room holds both statements at once and keeps moving. Petitions begin to circulate. Families split. Men who have served together in the militia sign opposite sides of the same argument. April brings more paper and more arrests. On April 18th, a warrant is issued that includes Giles Corey, Mary Warren, Abigail Hobbs, and Bridget Bishop. A week earlier, the village might have been surprised to see Giles Corey's name. By now, the lists have stopped surprising anyone. Bridget Bishop is examined on April 19th. with Samuel Paris recording the exchange. The hearing reads like a room trying to keep peace with itself. The afflicted girls cry out. They say Bishop Spectre threatens them. They say she comes at night and sends creatures to bite and pinch. Bishop has been accused before, years earlier, and the older rumor is pulled back into the light. Witnesses bring forward stories that never fully disappeared. Disputes, tavern talk, a reputation for stepping outside the narrow dress and manners expected of a godly woman. In a witchcraft case, an old quarrel does not stay small. It becomes motive. Bishop denies the charges. Denial is not enough. By the end of April, commitments and warrants stack up faster than the jails can empty. Salem's jail and Boston's jail hold more bodies than county process was built to manage. Families carry bread and broth to the keeper. Men ride out with folded paper that orders a neighbor taken. Women sit on benches in Ingersoll's house and watch other women questioned about the devil's book. What began as a village crisis has outgrown the village. The paperwork moves beyond Salem, carried back and forth to Boston, into the hands of men who think less about neighbors and more about jurisdiction. The question is no longer whether witchcraft accusation will continue, but how the province intends to handle them. That question produces its own answer. In Boston, plans begin to form for a special court. New judges, formal trials, a calendar built to process what Salem has already set in motion. The prisoners wait, while the province decides how belief will be converted into verdicts. And once that machinery is in place, it will not be easy to stop. This episode ends before any formal trials begin. In the next chapter of the story, Salem moves from accusation to judgment. Until next time, good night.